She said, "He's just a work husband. Stop being insecure." I replied, "You're right." Then I invited her work husband's actual wife to dinner. The look on my girlfriend's face when she saw who was sitting at our table. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a ride. My girlfriend of 3 years told me her male coworker was just a work husband, and I was being insecure for questioning their relationship. So I did what any reasonable guy would do. I agreed with her. Then I invited his actual wife to dinner without telling my girlfriend. The look on her face when she walked into that restaurant and saw who was sitting at our table, worth every second of planning. Let me back up and give you the full picture. I'm 29, work as a structural engineer for a construction firm here in Arizona. Been at the same company since I graduated, worked my way up from junior engineer to senior project lead. Nothing flashy, but I make good money, own my own place, and drive a truck that's paid off. The kind of boring stability that apparently makes you too predictable, according to some people. My place is this 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown Phoenix. Bought it 3 years ago when everyone said the market was too hot and I should wait. Glad I didn't listen. Got a nice backyard with a fire pit, a 2-car garage where I keep my project motorcycle, and enough space that I don't feel like I'm living in a shoebox. Nothing crazy, but it's mine. The motorcycle is this 1982 Honda CB750 that I've been restoring piece by piece for the last 2 years. Found it in some old guy's barn listing on Craigslist for $500. Engine was seized, chrome was shot, and the seat looked like something had been nesting in it. But the frame was solid, and I've always wanted a project. Something about working with your hands after spending all day staring at blueprints and spreadsheets keeps you grounded. I met Brittany at a friend's cookout about 3.5 years ago. She was this marketing coordinator at some tech startup, all bubbly energy and big plans. Had this smile that could light up a room and these green eyes that made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. We hit it off immediately. That cookout was at my buddy Kevin's place. He has this massive backyard with a pool, and every summer he throws this big party for Memorial Day. Half the people there I knew from college, the other half were random connections from various social circles. Brittany came with a co-worker of Kevin's girlfriend, just tagging along because she'd recently moved to the area and didn't know many people yet. I was manning the grill when she walked over, asking about the brisket I was smoking. Most girls at these things head straight for the coolers and the pool, but Brittany was genuinely interested in the smoking process, asking about rub recipes and temperature control. Found out later she'd grown up in Texas, where barbecue is practically a religion. We stood by that grill for 2 hours talking about everything from smoked meats to our careers to our families. She loved that I was stable. That's literally what she told me on our 3rd date. I love that you have your life together. You're not like these other guys who are still figuring themselves out at 30. She said it like it was the highest compliment she could give. Our first official date was at this little Vietnamese place downtown. Nothing fancy, just good food and conversation. She ordered pho and I got banh mi, and we ended up staying until they practically kicked us out at closing. I walked her to her car, she kissed me on the cheek, and I drove home thinking I'd finally met someone worth getting serious about. The second date was a hike at South Mountain. Brittany showed up in actual hiking boots, not those designer sneakers that some girls wear, and then complain about the terrain. She kept pace with me the whole way up, didn't ask to stop every 5 minutes, and brought her own water bottle instead of expecting me to carry everything. Little things like that matter when you're trying to figure out if someone's the real deal. For the first 2 years, things were solid. We moved in together after year 1. She'd come home from work, we'd cook dinner together, watch shows, plan weekend trips, normal couple stuff. Her parents loved me. My parents loved her. Everyone kept asking when I was going to propose. Moving in together was a big step, but it felt natural. We'd been spending most nights at each other's places anyway, and it just made financial sense to combine households. Found us a nice apartment first, then bought the house about 8 months later when the market dipped, and I found a deal I couldn't pass up. Brittany was excited about decorating, making it feel like home. We spent entire weekends at furniture stores and home improvement places, picking out paint colors, and arguing about whether we needed a sectional or a regular couch. Those early days of living together were some of the best times of my life. Lazy Sunday mornings making breakfast together, coming home from work to find she'd already started dinner, building furniture from those Swedish instruction manuals that make you question your intelligence. We had this rhythm that just worked. Her parents came to visit about 6 months after we moved into the house. Her dad, Don, is this retired accountant, super detail-oriented, asks a lot of questions. Her mom, Patricia, is warmer, more emotional, the type who wants to know how you're feeling rather than what you're doing. They both seemed genuinely happy that their daughter had found someone stable. Don actually pulled me aside during that visit, Told me he'd been worried about Brittany after some of her previous relationships. Apparently, she had a history of going for the flashy type, guys who talked big but couldn't follow through. You're different, he said. You actually do what you say you're going to do. That matters. I thought about that conversation a lot after everything went down. How her dad had basically told me his daughter had a pattern of poor choices, and I'd somehow convinced myself I was the exception that proved she'd changed. I was actually planning to propose. Had been looking at rings for months. Even talked to her dad about it during Thanksgiving last year. He gave me his blessing. Told me he was glad his daughter found one of the good ones. That conversation still hits different now, knowing what I know. The first time she mentioned Derek was around January of this year. Just casual stuff at first. Derek said the funniest thing in our meeting today. Or, Derek and I grabbed lunch because our schedules synced up. Normal co-worker stuff? I didn't think anything of it. Derek was some senior account manager at her company. From what she described, he was this charming guy who'd been there for years, knew everyone, and had this way of making people feel important. Classic corporate climber type. I'd heard about guys like him. Every office has one. But then Derek started coming up more and more. Derek thinks I should push for that promotion. Derek says my ideas are being wasted in my current role. Derek understands the pressure I'm under. Every conversation somehow circled back to what Derek thought, what Derek said, what Derek suggested. I tried to bring it up casually one night. We were on the couch, she was scrolling through her phone, and I just asked, "So what's Derek's deal anyway? You talk about him a lot." She didn't even look up. He's just a work husband. You know how it is. Someone you can vent to about office drama without it being weird. Work husband. I'd heard that term before, but never really thought about what it meant. Apparently, it means some other dude gets all the emotional intimacy, while I get the privilege of paying half the mortgage and taking out the trash. Does Derek have an actual wife? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Yeah, they've been married like 8 years or something. Got 2 kids. She said it like that was supposed to make me feel better. Like the fact that he was married meant there was nothing to worry about. I let it go. Told myself I was being insecure. That's what guys are supposed to do, right? Trust their partner. Don't be that jealous boyfriend who can't handle his girlfriend having male friends. But then the late night started. Big project deadline. Derek and I are staying late to finish the presentation. Client emergency. Derek needs me to help him prep for tomorrow's meeting. Team building dinner. Just the core group. Derek organized it. Always Derek. Always some excuse that somehow involved the two of them being together outside of normal work hours. I started paying attention to the details. The way she'd come home from these late nights looking flushed and distracted. How she'd immediately shower before coming to bed. The way her phone was suddenly always face down on the table, when it used to just sit there openly. One night I asked her directly, "Is there something going on with you and Derek?" She looked at me like I just accused her of robbing a bank. "Are you serious right now? He's my coworker. He's married. What is wrong with you?" "I'm just asking. You spend more time with him than you do with me lately. Because we work together. And unlike some people, my job actually requires me to collaborate with my team." The way she emphasized some people made it clear she was taking a shot at me, like my job as an engineer wasn't demanding enough to understand her corporate struggles. "I'm not trying to start a fight," I said. "I just feel like something's different lately." That's when she dropped the line that would eventually come back to haunt her. "He's just a work husband. Stop being insecure." God, I didn't realize I was dating someone who couldn't handle me having professional relationships with men. Maybe you should work on your self-esteem, instead of projecting your issues onto me. I sat there for a second, processing what she just said. The woman I was planning to marry just told me my concerns about her increasingly suspicious behavior were actually my problem. That I needed to work on myself because I noticed she was spending more time with another man than with me. Something shifted in that moment. I don't know how to explain it exactly. It wasn't anger, it was more like clarity. Like when you've been staring at a blueprint trying to figure out why something doesn't add up, and then suddenly you see the structural flaw that's been there all along. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'm sorry. I'll work on that." She looked surprised. Probably expected me to keep arguing, keep pushing, keep giving her ammunition to paint me as the jealous, controlling boyfriend. Instead, I just agreed with her and went back to watching TV. "Really?" she asked, almost suspicious. "Just like that?" "Yeah, you're right. I was being insecure. Won't happen again." She studied me for a moment, then went back to her phone. Probably texting Derek about how she just put me in my place. But here's the thing about being an engineer. We solve problems. We analyze situations, identify variables, and develop solutions. My girlfriend wanted me to stop questioning her relationship with Derek? Fine. I'd stop questioning it. I'd verify it instead. Over the next few weeks, I became very observant. Not stalker-level crazy, just attentive. I noticed patterns. Brittany always worked late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She always had her team dinners on Fridays when I had my weekly basketball game with the guys. Her phone was always charging in the other room when we were together, but somehow the battery was always dead when I happened to be nearby when it rang. I started keeping mental notes of everything. The excuses she made, the time she came home, the way her stories would subtly change when I asked follow-up questions. Engineers are trained to spot inconsistencies. It's literally what we do when reviewing structural plans. One beam that doesn't add up can bring down an entire building. And Brittany's story had a lot of beams that weren't adding up. One Tuesday night, she said she was staying late for a client presentation. I happened to drive past her office around 8 p.m. on my way back from picking up parts for the motorcycle. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. Neither was Derek's, which I'd learned to identify from the company's parking structure. When she got home around 10, I casually asked how the presentation went. She launched into this detailed story about the client being difficult, about how Derek had to smooth things over, about how she was exhausted from all the back and forth. Very convincing. Would have believed it completely if I hadn't seen the empty parking lot 2 hours earlier. I also noticed she'd started putting more effort into her appearance on certain days. New outfits, extra makeup, perfume that she'd never worn around me. All on the days she had important meetings with Derek's team. Her credit card statement showed charges at restaurants I'd never been to with her. Upscale places, usually for 2 people based on the amounts. When I asked about them, she said they were client dinners. Sure, clients who apparently required 4-star Italian cuisine at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. The final piece of the puzzle came when she left her laptop open one afternoon. She'd run out to grab groceries and forgot to close it. I wasn't planning to snoop, but a notification popped up from their company's internal messaging system. Derek, can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. My heart stopped. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Then I read the conversation thread above it. Brittany, same. I hate having to go home and pretend everything's normal. Derek, I know, but soon we won't have to pretend anymore. Just need to figure out the timing. Brittany, what about Amanda? Have you talked to her yet? Derek, she doesn't suspect anything. Too busy with the kids to pay attention to what I'm doing. There it was. In plain text. My girlfriend of 3 years was having an affair with her married coworker, and they were actively planning some kind of future together while his wife was at home taking care of their children, completely oblivious. I took screenshots, sent them to my email. Then I closed the laptop exactly how she'd left it and sat down to think. Most guys in this situation would confront their girlfriend immediately. Yell, scream, throw stuff, demand answers. But what would that accomplish? She'd cry, deny everything, gaslight me into thinking I violated her privacy by snooping, and somehow I'd end up apologizing for discovering her affair. Number 1, I needed a different approach, something that would expose the truth without giving her any room to spin the narrative. That's when I remembered something from the message thread. Amanda, Derek's wife, the woman at home with 2 kids who doesn't suspect anything, the woman who deserved to know what her husband was doing behind her back. Finding Amanda wasn't hard. Derek had a pretty visible presence on professional networking sites. His profile listed his company, his role, and included a professional headshot of some guy who looked exactly like the type to cheat on his wife with a younger coworker. Slicked back hair, expensive suit, smile that probably worked great on clients and unsuspecting marketing coordinators. From there, I found his personal social media. Set to private, but his profile picture was a family photo. Him, a pretty brunette woman, and 2 young kids. The wife he was betraying. The family he was preparing to destroy. A little more digging, and I found Amanda's profile. She worked as a pediatric nurse at a hospital across town. Her page was full of pictures of her kids, posts about family activities, and quotes about gratitude and blessed living. She had no idea her husband was planning to blow up their life. I created a new email account. Generic name, nothing traceable. Then I drafted a message to Amanda. Hi, Amanda. You don't know me, but I have information about your husband that you deserve to know. I have evidence of an affair. I know this is hard to hear from a stranger, but I believe you have the right to know the truth. If you're willing to meet, I can show you everything. This isn't a scam or a joke. I wish it was. Sent it before I could talk myself out of it. 3 days later, she responded, Who is this? How do I know you're telling the truth? I sent her 1 screenshot. Just 1. Derek telling Brittany he couldn't stop thinking about her. Her response came within minutes. Where do you want to meet? We met at a coffee shop on the other side of town. Neutral territory where neither of us would run into anyone we knew. Amanda showed up looking exactly like her photos, except with dark circles under her eyes and a tightness around her mouth that suggested she hadn't slept well since my email. The coffee shop was one of those independent places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. The kind of place where people come to work on laptops and have conversations they don't want overheard. I'd gotten there 15 minutes early, staked out a table in the back corner where we could talk without being disturbed. When Amanda walked in, she scanned the room until she spotted me. I'd described what I'd be wearing in my last email. She didn't look surprised or confused, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from suspecting something terrible and finally having it confirmed. "You're the boyfriend," she said as she sat down. Not a question. "Yeah, 3 years. How long has this been going on?" "I'm not sure exactly, but based on the messages, at least a few months, maybe longer." I showed her everything. The screenshots, the patterns I'd noticed, the timeline I'd pieced together. She listened quietly, occasionally wiping her eyes, but mostly just absorbing the information with a kind of calm that surprised me. She asked good questions, specific things about dates and times, about how I'd discovered the messages, about what else I'd noticed. It was clear this wasn't her first rodeo dealing with suspicions about her husband, even if she'd convinced herself to ignore them until now. "I knew something was wrong," she finally said. "He's been distant for months, coming home late, always on his phone." I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. That's what they want us to think. I was told I was being insecure. She laughed bitterly. "Derek told me I was being clingy when I asked why he was working so many late nights. Said I was smothering him. Classic deflection. Make the person asking questions feel like they're the problem. He's been doing it for years. I just never wanted to see it." We sat in silence for a moment. Two strangers connected by the worst possible circumstance. Both of us had trusted people who were actively betraying us. And both of us had been made to feel like the problem for noticing. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Amanda looked at me with something that might have been respect. "I want to see her face when she realizes she's been caught. I want to watch her try to explain herself while I'm sitting right there." That's when the plan came together. "How do you feel about dinner?" I asked. Amanda smiled for the first time since we'd met. "I could eat." The plan was simple but required precise timing. I would tell Brittany I wanted to take her to a nice dinner to apologize for being insecure about Derek. She'd think she'd won. She'd think her gaslighting had worked, and I was back to being the oblivious boyfriend she could manipulate. Meanwhile, Amanda and I would be waiting at the restaurant. Same reservation time, adjacent table. And when Brittany walked in expecting a romantic apology dinner, she'd find herself face to face with the wife of the man she was sleeping with. I spent the next week being the perfect boyfriend. Flowers, compliments, suggesting we do more things together. Brittany ate it up, probably thinking she'd successfully trained me to stop questioning her behavior. "I was thinking we could go to that Italian place downtown on Saturday," I said casually over breakfast. "The fancy one you've been wanting to try. My treat. Consider it an apology for being weird about the work stuff." Her face lit up. "Really? I've been wanting to go there for months." "I know. That's why I made reservations." She practically floated through the rest of the day, texting me heart emojis, telling me how excited she was, how glad she was that we were getting back on track. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Saturday came. Brittany spent 2 hours getting ready. New dress, professional hair and makeup, the whole 9 yards. She wanted to look good for our big apology dinner. Or maybe she was just used to putting in effort for Derek and didn't know how to turn it off. "You look beautiful," I said as she came out of the bedroom. "Thank you, baby." She kissed my cheek. "I'm really glad we're doing this. I feel like we've been disconnected lately." "Me too. That's why tonight is important." We drove to the restaurant in comfortable silence. Brittany was scrolling through her phone, probably texting Derek about how her clueless boyfriend was taking her to a fancy dinner to apologize for questioning their work relationship. I kept my eyes on the road and my expression neutral. The restaurant was one of those upscale places with dim lighting, white tablecloths, and prices that required a second mortgage. Brittany's idea of a romantic setting. She'd been dropping hints about this place for months. We walked in, and the hostess greeted us with a practiced smile. "Welcome. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes. Under my name. Table for 2. "Perfect. Right this way." She led us through the main dining room toward the back. Brittany was taking in the ambiance, clearly pleased with herself for training me to be more romantic. She had no idea what was waiting for her. As we approached our table, I saw Amanda already seated at the adjacent table, alone, nursing a glass of sparkling water and pretending to look at her phone. She was wearing a simple but elegant dress, and she'd clearly put effort into looking composed, like a woman who had her life together, like a woman who didn't deserve what her husband was doing to her. The hostess seated us at our table. Brittany sat down with her back to Amanda, completely oblivious. I sat across from her, facing Amanda directly. We made brief eye contact, and Amanda gave me an almost imperceptible nod. "This place is gorgeous," Brittany said, looking around. "Thank you for doing this, baby. I know I've been stressed with work lately, and I appreciate you being understanding." "Of course. That's what partners do, right? Support each other?" "Exactly." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I love you. I love you too. I let her have that moment. The last moment of believing everything was fine. The waiter came by, took our orders, and left. Brittany was chatting about something that happened at work. Some drama with a client that Derek had handled brilliantly, of course. Even on our romantic dinner, she couldn't stop talking about him. Speaking of Derek, I said casually, I actually have something I wanted to tell you. She looked up, curious. Oh? What's that? I invited someone to join us tonight. Someone I thought you should meet. Before she could process what I'd said, Amanda stood up from her table and walked over. She pulled out the empty chair next to Brittany and sat down, placing her purse on the table like she owned the place. Brittany's face went through about 6 different emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear, panic, and then a pale, sickly shade of denial. Hi, Brittany, Amanda said calmly. I'm Amanda, Derek's wife. I believe you know my husband pretty well. The silence at our table was deafening. The ambient restaurant noise faded into background static as Brittany's brain tried to process the ambush she'd walked into. What is this? Brittany finally managed, looking at me like I'd betrayed her. The irony wasn't lost on me. This is a conversation that needs to happen, I said evenly. Amanda deserves to hear the truth from you directly, and I deserve to hear you admit what you've been doing. I don't know what you're talking about. But her voice was shaking, and her eyes kept darting toward the exit like a trapped animal. Amanda pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a screenshot of the messages I'd shown her at the coffee shop. Don't insult my intelligence, Amanda said quietly. I've seen the messages, all of them. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me exactly how long this has been going on, and you're going to tell the truth, because I already know more than you think I do. Brittany looked at the phone screen, then at Amanda, then at me. Whatever escape route she'd been calculating in her head disappeared. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's not an answer, Amanda replied. How long? 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. That meant she'd been sleeping with Derek while we were actively talking about our future, while I was ring shopping, while her father was giving me his blessing. 6 months, Amanda repeated, her composure cracking slightly. 6 months of coming home to me, playing with our children, sleeping in our bed, while you were having an affair with this girl. I'm not just some girl, Brittany started defensively. You're exactly some girl, Amanda cut her off. You're girl number 4, actually. Did Derek tell you about the others? About the intern 2 years ago? About the client last spring? Brittany's face went even paler if that was possible. What? Oh, honey. Amanda almost sounded sympathetic. Almost. You actually thought you were special? You thought Derek was going to leave his wife and kids for you? He's done this before. He'll do it again. You're just the latest distraction until he gets bored and moves on to the next young thing who thinks she's different. I watched Brittany's world crumble in real time. The fantasy she'd built in her head, the future she and Derek had whispered about in their secret messages, all of it was dissolving under the weight of Amanda's words. He said he was going to leave you, Brittany said weakly. He said we were going to be together. They always say that. Amanda leaned back in her chair. And women like you always believe it. Do you know how I know about the others? Because I found out about the intern the same way. He cried, begged for forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. I believed him because we had a newborn at home, and I was terrified of being a single mother. Why didn't you leave him then? I asked, genuinely curious. Because I was weak, because I wanted to believe people could change, because I didn't want my children to grow up in a broken home. Amanda's eyes hardened. But I'm done making excuses for him. This one, she gestured at Brittany, was the final straw. The waiter approached tentatively, sensing the tension. Is everything all right here? Can I get you anything? Actually, I said, we're going to need a few more minutes, and maybe some waters all around. He nodded and retreated quickly. I turned back to Brittany. Here's what I don't understand. You had everything. We had everything. A house, plans, a future. Your family loved me. My family loved you. What was so missing that you needed to go find it with some married guy at your office? You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work, she said, falling back on her old excuses. I don't understand pressure. I'm responsible for making sure buildings don't collapse and kill people. But please, tell me more about your marketing deadlines. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is lying to me for 6 months. What's not fair is making me feel crazy for noticing something was wrong. What's not fair is planning a future with another woman's husband while pretending to plan one with me. Brittany started crying then. Big, dramatic tears that I'd seen her use before when she wanted to get out of an argument. The I'm the victim here tears. But Amanda wasn't having it. Save the waterworks. You weren't crying when you were sneaking around with my husband. You weren't crying when you told him I was too busy with our kids to notice. You don't get to play the victim now that you've been caught. What are you going to do? Brittany asked, looking between us. Well, Amanda said, standing up and gathering her purse. I'm going to go home, pack my husband's things, and change the locks. Then I'm going to call my attorney. Derek's going to have a very interesting Monday morning when he shows up to work and finds out his wife has filed for divorce and his girlfriend's boyfriend knows everything. What about us? Brittany looked at me desperately. There is no us, I said simply. There hasn't been an us for 6 months, apparently. You just didn't bother to tell me. Baby, please. We can work through this. It was a mistake. Derek manipulated me. 6 months isn't a mistake. 6 months is a choice. A choice you made every single day when you could have told me the truth, could have ended it, could have been honest. Instead, you chose him, so now I'm choosing me. I stood up, pulled out enough cash to cover what we'd ordered, and set it on the table. Where are you going to go? Brittany grabbed my arm. Home. My home. The house I bought. The house that's in my name. You have until tomorrow afternoon to get your things. Anything still there after 5 p.m. goes in the yard. You can't do that. We live together. Actually, I can. I own the house. You're on the lease as a tenant, and as of right now, I'm terminating that arrangement. I'd looked up the legalities before planning this dinner. Wanted to make sure I had my bases covered. Being an engineer means being thorough. Amanda and I walked out of the restaurant together, leaving Brittany sitting alone at a table set for a romantic dinner that never happened. I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't look back. Thank you, Amanda said as we reached our cars. I couldn't have done this without you. I think we both needed this. Closure or whatever. What are you going to do now? Go home, probably work on my motorcycle. Try to remember who I was before I met her. Amanda smiled sadly. That sounds healthy. I should probably try something similar. Maybe take up a hobby that doesn't involve being lied to by the people I trust. We exchanged numbers in case either of us needed to coordinate anything legally, then went our separate ways. The next day, Brittany showed up with her mother to get her things. Her mom kept shooting me dirty looks like I was the villain in this story. I just sat in the garage working on the CB750 while they hauled boxes to a rental truck. At one point, Brittany came out to the garage. Eyes red, mascara smeared, looking nothing like the put-together woman I'd taken to dinner the night before. Can we please talk about this? She asked. Nothing to talk about. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But 3 years, baby. Doesn't that mean anything? I set down my wrench and looked at her. Really looked at her. 3 years meant everything to me. That's why I was planning to propose. That's why I asked your dad for permission. That's why I spent months looking at rings and planning a future. But clearly, 3 years meant nothing to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have spent 6 of those months in bed with someone else's husband. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but nothing came out. Your dad's permission, she finally managed. You talked to my dad? Thanksgiving. He said I was one of the good ones. Guess we both got fooled. That broke her. Whatever composure she'd been holding on to crumbled. She stood there sobbing in my garage while her mother called for her from the driveway. Brittany, we need to go. She looked at me one last time, probably hoping for some sign that I'd take her back, that we could work through this, like she kept saying. But I was done being the understanding boyfriend, done being the guy who ignored red flags because he wanted to believe in the best version of someone. Goodbye, Brittany. She left. I went back to my motorcycle. The aftermath hit fast and hard. Monday morning, Amanda called me at work. Derek just got served at the office, in front of his entire team. I hired a process server specifically to deliver the papers during their morning stand-up meeting. I nearly choked on my coffee. You didn't? Oh, I absolutely did. His assistant said he turned white as a ghost and had to excuse himself. Apparently, he's been in his office with the door closed ever since. That same day, Brittany's friend Jessica blew up my phone with texts. You need to call Brittany. She's a complete mess. She got sent home from work because she couldn't stop crying. Delete, block. Then Madison. What you did was cruel and unnecessary. She made a mistake. You didn't have to humiliate her like that. Delete, block. Then some number I didn't recognize. This is Brittany's cousin. She's staying with us and won't stop talking about you. Please just call her. Delete, block. Tuesday, Amanda sent me screenshots from Derek's social media. His wife had apparently logged into his accounts and posted a detailed statement about his pattern of infidelity with subordinates, and wished him luck in his future endeavors. The comments section was a bloodbath. Co-workers, clients, even his own family members were piling on. By Wednesday, the company had launched an internal investigation. Amanda had forwarded her evidence to HR, and suddenly Derek's expense reports were getting audited. All those fancy dinners and hotel rooms he'd been billing as client entertainment? Turns out the company takes fraud pretty seriously. Thursday, Brittany got called into a meeting with HR. Apparently, 3 other women from the office had come forward with stories about Derek once word got out. The company was doing damage control, and anyone connected to the scandal was getting scrutinized. She called me 6 times that afternoon. I let every single one go to voicemail. Friday, Derek got fired. Not just let go. Fired for cause. Misuse of company funds, inappropriate relationships with subordinates, and violation of the company's ethics policy. Amanda sent me a picture of the box of his stuff sitting on her front porch with a note that said, "Come get your things. The locks are changed." The following Monday, Brittany resigned. She tried to spin it as her choice, posted something on social media about new opportunities, but everyone knew the truth. Her reputation was destroyed. Nobody wanted to be associated with the woman who'd been sleeping with the executive who just got fired for fraud. 2 weeks later, I ran into Brittany's dad, Don, at the hardware store. He was in the electrical aisle. I was grabbing sandpaper for the motorcycle. We made eye contact, and there was this moment where we both considered pretending we hadn't seen each other. But Don walked over. "Got a minute?" We ended up talking in the parking lot for almost an hour. He told me Brittany had moved back home with her parents, that she'd been applying for jobs in other cities because she couldn't show her face anywhere in Phoenix, that Patricia was devastated and kept asking where they went wrong as parents. "I'm not going to apologize for what I did," I told him. "I'm not asking you to. What you did took guts. Most guys would have just screamed and thrown stuff. You played it smart." He shook his head. "I'm embarrassed by my daughter, but I'm also kind of impressed by you." He asked if we could stay in touch, said he'd enjoyed working on cars with me, and didn't see why his daughter's mistakes should end that. I told him I'd think about it. 3 weeks after the restaurant incident, Amanda filed for divorce. She got a shark of an attorney who went after everything. The house, the retirement accounts, primary custody of the kids. Derek tried to fight it, but between the evidence of his affairs and the financial misconduct that got him fired, he didn't have a leg to stand on. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Amanda got the house, full custody with supervised visitation for Derek, and alimony that would make your eyes water. Derek had to move to Nevada to find work, because nobody in the Phoenix business community would touch him. Meanwhile, I finished the CB750, took it for its first real ride on a Saturday morning in October, cruised through the desert on empty roads, feeling the engine purr underneath me, stopped at this little diner in the middle of nowhere, and had the best breakfast burrito of my life. Work gave me another promotion. Senior project lead with my own team. Turns out being the guy who handles problems calmly and methodically is valuable in engineering. Who knew? I started a new project too. Found a 1970 Chevy Nova at an estate sale. Some old guy's grandson was selling off everything after his grandfather passed. The Nova had been sitting in a barn for 15 years, but underneath all the dust and neglect was solid American muscle. Bought it for $3,000 and had it towed to my garage. Kevin came over to help me assess the damage. We spent the whole afternoon going through it, making lists of what needed to be replaced versus what could be salvaged. "You know what I like about this?" Kevin said, wiping grease off his hands. "What's that?" "It's honest. Car doesn't pretend to be something it's not. Either it runs or it doesn't. Either the parts work or they need replacing. No games, no manipulation, just metal and mechanics." That's weirdly deep for a guy who once tried to cook ramen in a coffee maker. Hey, that was college. I've grown as a person. About 2 months after everything went down, Brittany texted me. Long message about how she'd been doing a lot of thinking. How she realized she'd thrown away something real for a fantasy. How she hoped someday I could forgive her. I read the whole thing. Then I blocked her number. Her dad still texts me occasionally, sends me pictures of classic cars he sees around town, asks my opinion on restoration projects he's considering. We grabbed lunch once, talked about everything except Brittany. It was nice. Amanda and I stayed in touch too. She started a support group for women whose husbands had cheated. She invited me to speak once, share my perspective. I declined, but appreciated the offer. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.